It's really warm.
I was trying to decide which dress to wear
I'm Peter.
tonight also,
I'm
but.
Jane.
You're Jane?
Yes,
Who are you?
Make sure it highlights your
I'm a
eyes.
zone.
You are.
I am.
Something
But
well-
I'm
that's
open it.
right.
Something well
I'm
vented.
open it.
I
I
haven't
usually
seen
sit,
you from this
Big
end.
blonde
usually
furry
sit over there.
eyebrow.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So what do you think, Rob? What was our record for the first meeting? Like 7 minutes?
13
Something
anyways.
about, just about right
Just
there.
about 7 minutes? We don't want to go for the record tonight?
Oh, yes.
I'm, whatever record setting policy you want to do
He-
tonight,
he's
Peter, I
in
support
full
your decision.
Have you seen Charlie?
I saw him limping through the parking lot.
We
of
just
what's the
Walmart.
matter?
put him in the elevator a while ago.
Yeah.
He's here.
He's here?
Well,
Yeah, well, he was in
Is
the
he stuck in the
elevator.
elevator?
I mean, it has been a while.
it has, yeah.
Like the scale out.
What the hell is
These are
that
the-
damn
these are all the
fool
ones that
doing
were
here?
approved.
He could have zoomed in.
Last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why is he limping?
Yeah, I just give
He
it.
had
just so-
surgery,
so People can
still-
see what that.
Said
What was
further
approved out
reconstructive
of last
surgery
year's.
from
This
his
one didn't happen
motorcycle
yet, did it?
accident
The Gale Ave?
on his Sturgis
haven't been
trip
down
10
there.
No,
years
I don't,
ago.
that hasn't happened yet. They
No,
got
I hope
approval
the hell
for
I
it.
never
They had a
get
meeting out there with the residents, Parks
talking
and
about
Rec did,
my.
and
Yeah,
she
anyway.
didn't get very
I've got
much
2 new
traction
hips
with
and a knee.
them
Yeah,
wanting to do
I have
any
2
improvements
I'm
out there.
too hip to be needed.
They wanted to keep it a secret,
I
so
like these fake ones. They're good.
Can't blame
I
him, I
ain't going there.
guess.
No way.
I
Hips
can't
are,
own them either because
hips
I
are
didn't know the
easy.
city even owned it.
Hips are easy,
Very
shoulders
easy.
are
Ain't
not.
doing it.
Oh,
No.
no.
I'm
shoulders.
probably not gonna, I get the cortisone shot
I would
every 3
rather
months.
have Another knee.
You'll
than
have to walk all the
Sorry.
way over here,
Charlie.
Charlie.
Oh, my God.
See, there he is.
Charlie, you risked your life and limb to get here tonight. We're greatly appreciative the lengths that people will go to avoid using Zoom.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Did you?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm glad
great.
you brought the Zoom up,
Why?
because there may be a meeting in October that if I can be on Zoom for this, I would very much appreciate
You
it.
That's
having
all.
another operation?
If that's possible.
I'm gonna put them all on Zoom.
Oh, cool. 'Cause
I still have to have the physical quorum here, but
Yeah,
I
that'd be
think
great.
it's great for the public to have the Zoom option. I think it's
agree.
great just for the city to move forward with technology, and it's live on YouTube and it gives us lots of
And so
opportunity.
long as the pandemic lasts, if any member were to say have cold symptoms and just out of abundance of caution want to stay
Sure.
home, they can Zoom in anyway. So,
Good idea.
so.
Cool, all right.
No, I discovered my computer doesn't have a camera on it.
Well, how old is it?
Very.
There's a solution for that,
Time for
Mike.
No, and I declined to participate.
On your phone.
Do it on your phone.
Dad?
Stretching it.
Going through the first. hoop.
Okay, well, why don't we get started? I don't think
Boy,
we're,
let's go.
Bruce, Bob, Emma,
That's the.
well, we have enough people, I think, to get started.
We've got a
So-
quorum, so
Yeah, okay.
That's.
We'll call the meeting to order at 6:33 PM. This is the Capital Improvement Committee. It's a subcommittee of the Planning Board. This meeting will be held in person in the notice meeting room in conformance to New Hampshire RSA 91A. The right to know law. A quorum of the board's members must be physically present in the meeting room for the meeting to start and or continue. I see we have a quorum present. The public can choose to attend and participate in person or by Zoom. If something occurs that disables access to Zoom, the meeting will continue regardless. Members of the public or board members using Zoom will have no recourse. Choosing to use Zoom is done at the individual's risk. If using Zoom requires the use of an enabled device, smartphone or a laptop, to participate on Zoom, the link is in the agenda that was posted. It's webinar ID 850-5974-0815. And again, the link is at the go to the city's agenda center for these meetings, and there's always a link. If you wish to just listen and not look at our handsome faces, call 1-646-558-8656 or 1-301-715-8592. These numbers don't do anything, it's just to appease the public. No, using this option only allows you to listen to the meeting and no opportunity to participate. To view this meeting, you can go to YouTube under the City of Laconia's channel there at youtube.com. It's Laconia NH. If any board member is using Zoom, they must identify their location. I don't think we have anybody remote here tonight. What else we have? And due to technical difficulties, we are temporarily suspending the live transmission of city meetings on channel 26 because of incompatibilities between the Zoom virtual meeting platform and Atlantic Broadband. Live transmissions of city council meetings on channel 26 will resume when full in-person meetings resume. So meeting's been called to order. May we have a roll call, please, Mr. Moore?
Gail Ober. Mark Haynes,
Here.
Charlie Sinclair,
Here,
Stacy Susie,
Yes.
Jane LaRoche,
Yes.
Mike Foot,
Here.
Paul Dugan,
Here.
and Bruce Cheney.
Here.
Uh,
Welcome, everyone.
And Karen Santoro will be doing the minutes this evening.
Oh, hi, Karen. Didn't mean to ignore you there. Okay, good. So at this point, we have some new members here, so I'm gonna let Rob fill you guys in as to how this thing works, and then I'll have some remarks, and then we'll take questions and probably adjourn, so.
Oh, there's other stuff.
So everybody should have a binder. Within the binder, the first few pages are what the city approved this year in July for the capital outlay, which items that were submitted last year that were approved for funding. Moving on. I have last year's scores
Nice.
of how we submitted, and then all the department's submissions are in the 11.5 by 17 sheets that fold out. Everything's has an ID number, so you can correlate it to descriptions or additional comments. There are some additional comments all in the back because police department is likes to narrate a lot of things. So there's our very long descriptions. And then after the submittals, you have the score sheets that you'll need to submit when the process is nearing wrap after all the presentations. After that is Krista Larson from DPW submitted some explanations of sanitary sewer funding. So that's in there. And then right behind that is the police department's narratives. So as we go through this process, tonight we're just doing organizational setup. So we'll elect a chair and a vice chair. And then the next two meetings will go into presentations where we'll score things, each individual item between 1 and 25 based off of the scoring criteria. I think I attached it here. I did not include it in there, but I will give you a copy of that at the next meeting.
Who do we start with? Who are we gonna have the first?
The first presentation will be the water department and public works. And the water department is an enterprise fund, so most of all their stuff is self-funded. It's in our ordinance that we listen to everybody and enjoy their
Oh, I have questions.
presentation, and they do a lot, the department heads do a lot of work to create these capital submissions.
So you heard that too, Mike. Okay.
Yes. It wasn't me.
So after we do all the presentations and we submit our scoring, we rank everything. And we come back in as a board and we decide if that ranking is appropriate to submit to the planning board for further review. And then the planning board submits those rankings to the city council.
Any questions for Rob?
I do have one question, Mr. Chair. I see that we have this long 8 by 16 or whatever
Yep.
sheet. And then we have what was approved. How do we know if something on this list was requested last year? This is my first time. I
So-
never really read
Oh,
this.
okay, good.
I
question.
want to know how the
Good question.
carryovers, the things that
So-
didn't get funded last year, if they still are relevant to the department heads, how they appear on this sheet.
So
That's a good
when
question.
you get under the actual departments, if you keep going over to this first page here, like this, under public works,
Okay, yes.
under the individual, so you go over to the fourth column and it says type of project.
It says what?
It says, the column is type of project,
Yeah.
And there's 3 codes that can be placed in there. N for a new project, M for modified, or D if it's deleted. It's usually never deleted, but that will give you an indication if it's a new submittal that they added or whether they've just modified a previous submittal.
Okay, and then one follow-up question, Mr. Chair. How do we know how much money they asked for last year? I'd like to know, they've asked for $40,000 last year, it didn't get funded. Is that the same amount or is it says?
So they update these amounts every year.
I would think so, yeah.
I can give you a copy of last year's submittals. The issue as we start going into that, that's an incredible amount of information and people start getting confused and start mixing.
We're not
Two.
stupid, Rob.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's a lot of,
Speak for yourself.
it's just a lot of data. But I'd be happy to get that to whoever wants that.
Okay, thank you. I just want to know, I mean,
I understand it's
No,
good
that
to have a
helps me.
balance.
Thank you.
I guess so I have some measure of a balance that a
I
project.
keep the old ones.
Yeah, oh,
year
well,
after
see, I've
year,
never
I
been
keep
on
the
this
old
board,
ones.
so I don't have the old one. So if I could have
Yeah,
that, that would
absolutely.
be great. That way, if it was gonna cost $200,000 this year and it only was gonna cost $100,000 last year, then I think, A, we need to know that, and B, we need to be able to ask the department head one.
Okay.
Okay.
Good questions. Anybody else? So, as chair of the planning board, what I wanted to say is we've had a lot of discussions on the planning board and in the master plan steering committee about infrastructure. So when the departments come to us, starting with the 2 big ones, which is DPW and water, we're looking at a kind of infrastructure usually on most of the projects, either streets or roads or waters, utilities, things of that sort. We haven't made any decisions yet, I suppose, as a committee, the master plan steering committee. But I can tell you as a member of that committee and the planning board that this year, I would like to see us encourage the departments to come at us with transportation and recreational infrastructure improvements and the expansion of utilities in the northwest quadrant of the city, which will coincide nicely with the redevelopment of the state school property and the possible improvement of Hilliard Road, and to open up, because I think the infrastructure and housing is another important thing that we need to try to encourage. And right now, we are looking at probably having to change some zoning and sort of activate some of these TIF groups that we have, because there are some funds there, I believe, so. But they come before us and they tell us their wish list in their priority order. Usually all we do is rearrange the priorities, ask some questions, things like that. Then that's recommended. I mean, the purpose of this committee, as I understand it, is for there to be some vetting of these requests before they hit the city council, because by the time they hit the council, then everybody's up to their elbows in budget stuff. And sometimes it's going to come down to hard choices between capital improvements for this department as opposed to capital improvements for another department. They can rely on the recommendations from this committee. And frankly, sometimes I think it gives a little bit of a leg up for some of the departments that make a good presentation to the capital improvements plan committee. That put the extra time into it to explain it. And it gives them a trial run for when they have to stand before the council and explain it too, so.
The council can change anything we've done.
Well, that's true, yeah, and it goes through the planning board to the council, so we're gonna make a recommendation to the planning board will make a recommendation to the city. During my tenure, the planning board has not changed, materially changed any of the recommendations that came out of this committee.
But the council has.
Yes, well,
I
that's
think
their,
it's important to point out, you say that it can be a choice between this infrastructure improvement or that.
right,
And in many cases, for the council, it's a matter of this infrastructure or this operational expense.
Correct.
We all need to keep in perspective, there's a 2% cap on what the city can spend. So I don't think the council cavalierly avoids or ignores, and you can speak up anytime, but I don't think we ignore the recommendations of this committee, even remotely.
No,
I
I
do
don't.
think we sometimes have to.
Yeah.
You know, we need another dump truck or,
But I think, to be honest with you, the skateboard park is a perfect example.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And my
Oh.
God, anybody that goes by there, that thing is used 24, I think they use it 24 hours a day.
Yeah, I think this committee had a lot to do with the improvements that we saw last season at Bond Beach too.
Yes.
Okay.
Um, Yes,
Mr. Chair,
Kim.
could somebody please, because I'm a newbie here, define capital? I mean, I may have one idea of what a capital project is. I was just reading through some of these online and I didn't get to look at it very carefully. And I saw things for as little money as $35,000, which seems to be repeating expenses. It should be in operation budgets. I think of police radios, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that I don't consider to be capital expense. Now, if this committee has traditionally considered those as capital expenses, enlighten me. But
some of it
I'm
has,
thinking of it is what's capital and what's operational. And to what you said, but how do we know the difference if we don't have some sort of standard by which we measure all of that?
I
Bye.
think from the council's perspective, we look at the life expectancy of equipment.
Okay, yeah, I know that's
So
under the
a
definition. of
Portable radio
capital.
doesn't last 1 or 2 years. It lasts 5 or 10 years. So it becomes more of a, even though it's a relatively small amount of money, it's got a longer range of life.
Okay,
Right,
and
it's-
it, yeah,
Think
and
of
I,
capital as the property that, or the assets of the city,
Right.
as opposed to operating expenses. They don't come to us for operating expenses. They come to us and
I
requesting
understand the difference.
purchase or
but-
the improvement of something that creates value for the department, for the city.
Well,
the
yeah,
difference.
theoretically, everything creates value, but what I guess I was trying to get a handle on is there's no dollar amount. There's just, you look at it as an investment in something that's going to last a significant period of time.
There is a dollar amount. There's a finance puts out a policy.
Yeah,
Sets-
okay, and
sets a
so there is a
policy,
policy.
And it has to do with depreciation
Right,
and how
yeah.
long things are good for. There's a schedule that goes down and then there's a minimum value that has to be.
Right,
And that's what defines what we classify as a capital asset.
and, okay,
and
and the department heads are
And
aware
the
of that.
departments Are required to follow that
Okay,
guidance
thank you.
when they're
That-
requesting
Then
everything.
never mind. That's what I needed to know.
And they do a lot of work before they come to us.
Oh, I'm not questioning the work that goes into it. I just wanted to know, now knowing that the city has a policy that defines what's capital and what's operating, and that there are depreciation standards that the department heads have to adhere to. Then I withdraw my question. It's been answered.
No, it's a good question.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm new to
questions are
this
good
and I don't know if
questions.
I'm the only one, but that's why I asked that. I don't know, sometimes what I may think is an operating expense may actually in fact be capital expense.
Well, they say the only bad question is the one that wasn't asked, but in my case, it's the only bad question is the one they don't understand.
Well, and I would just think, so we know what that, and the department heads obviously know what that policy is.
Right.
And you guys have said to them, if you see it here, nice, I know you need it, but
Yeah.
budget, operations, not capital.
Because I send out this whole package to all the department heads every year, usually about, right, actually, it's the day after city council approves the budget
I'm sure, yeah.
of, hey, you need to start planning for the next budget.
Right.
And this is
Yeah.
the requirements that you need to fulfill for me. And that sheet is one of them that I send them each year just so that they know I can't include this and I can't include this, but I can put this in there.
Okay,
So-
no, then you've answered my question. So I have to assume that the vetting by the city finance department, the department heads and the planning department has only included things in our wish list that are true capital according to the definition the city has provided within its policy. Thank you.
Right, and the distinction between those enterprise funds and then the general
Well, that I know,
fund
yes.
is significant. Just the way that Waterworks is set up.
I know if we have something, a recommendation for the water works. Do our recommendations go back to the water commissioners?
You'll be able to interview them during.
Okay, so they come in
Directly.
front of
They
us.
come to
yeah.
us and make, each department comes to us. So next week, we will have Public Works and Water here.
Okay, and the
So-
commission, the water commission, which will come to us.
Well, they send a
They send a
department employee.
representative.
The director will come in, he'll present his,
Right.
he'll present his entire submission to you and explain why he's requesting each one and the timelines of why he's requesting that, and he'll give all the justifications.
And they have to do,
Yep.
they're encouraged to do multiple years at the same
Okay,
time.
but the city council has the legal authority to expend enterprise funds.
Yeah. Well, it's the only entity in the city that can.
The water
Okay,
commission
okay, that's what
actually
I-
Can
approves.
appropriate money.
We
So-
appropriate it, but an enterprise fund is then free to.
Spend it.
So the fees that the water department charges goes into an enterprise fund.
I understand that,
essentially.
yes.
And they oftentimes don't need to ask for any additional money, except when they're doing, as they have been the last couple of years, big projects in cooperation usually with Public Works.
Okay, well, that would make sense. I just wanted to know.
And you'll see that when they start doing presentations, the water department will reference, we're doing this project this year because DPW is gonna be doing a sewer replacement here, so the road's gonna be up at the same time, and then they'll
I
combine
think
all this
it was
stuff.
the appropriations authority I was going for. So the city council has to appropriate every nickel that gets spent by any fund in this city.
Right. We are at the front
you.
end of the budget process.
Okay, yeah,
We're the second step because the
that's what I
departments
asked.
have
I just
got to
didn't know if
work
the
up their-
independent enterprise funds had to do their own review after we've done it, or city council is it?
There are funds that come into the city. The school department
Right.
comes to mind that are not necessarily governed by the city council.
And I believe the water department is also the same,
and the water
Well, that's why I
department's the
asked,
same.
because the water department's coming next week.
but we can't really control what they. You can rank whatever, but it's really not
It's not up to us.
not up to us.
That's
They're
what I
still
was
gonna,
getting at.
they're still gonna do what they're gonna do at the end of the day.
Rob, have you already sent out
Okay,
the
well-
schedule for who appears on what date?
I sure have.
Okay.
Did you, I can make changes.
My view is I would prefer to have water come to one meeting and DPW come to another so that we have time
Right.
to ask a lot of questions, one, and two, so that we can look at what the water department is asking about and think about that before we sit down with Public Works. and
You got, I
talk
can ask, I can definitely make that change.
Well, it's up to the chairman.
If
but-
the,
Well, we haven't elected a chairman yet.
Well,
I'm chairman pro temp because we forgot.
I would like a chance to study. The pro tem has suggested that infrastructure in the northwest quadrant of the city is important. I think he'll tell you, I have been asking about this. So seeing what the water department says about cost to provide water and whatever, I'd like time then, a week at least, to look at that. And then when Public Works comes in, I can ask them questions as it relates to their portion of any project that we might ask.
I can do that.
I have a question. So are the utilities the property of the city or not? The stuff on the poles?
I don't believe so.
No, I believe it's.
They
it's
pay-
property.
It's a license,
rent.
right?
They pay
Is it
rent
like a
or-
license fee they pay the city?
They pay for each pole.
So what the city's
Property
interest
tax on
is,
that.
they have the authority to allow a business to come in and provide a public utility. That's basically it.
Yes.
Because the poles are owned by public service or by Eversource or whatever, et cetera. Okay. But, well, what I'm getting at is, so let's say we're on the master plan steering committee. What if we're saying, well, we'd like to increase cell phone or internet service in a certain part of the city. What, this committee wouldn't do that, right? I mean, there isn't even a city department associated with those things, is there? There's not. So these are all in the manager's lap, basically. There's a franchise type process for these, right?
They do come before the council with their franchise.
Unused.
Okay.
So we do have some authority as it relates.
Does the council ever say, well, we understand what you want to do here, but could you do something over here for us as well?
My recollection is that when we had some discussion 2 or 3 years ago about cable,
Okay.
Comcast and whoever the other one was,
Right.
we asked about improving, again, in the northwest quadrant, among other places. You know, and asked questions about how many megabits per second, you know, in each area. I don't believe we got the answers we were looking for, but
Comcast put all their stuff underground. They went around and trenched all over the city and put their optic cables underground, which is really smart because it cuts your maintenance budget like by 75%.
it increases your installation budget by about 25 or 30%.
I would guess, but you have to factor in
Yep,
the
yep.
labor involved.
Yep.
It was a very small crew. In fact, they were subcontractors, if I'm not mistaken. They went around.
Yep.
They had a trenching tool, basically. And then they laid the conduit and they backfilled and paved and moved on to the next street. So I mean, that's an infrastructure improvement, but it's not one that we had a lot to say about. But I mean, if we are going to, let's say, as a city, decide that we're going to commit to being a recreation destination, we've got to have the recreational infrastructure, you know? If we, and on all the years off and on that I've been on the planning board, I still think we haven't figured out what we want to be when we grow up, you know? We're still transitioning from a mill town, and that stuff, that horse left the barn a long time ago.
Well, I
So,
retired as police chief in 1990. And the population was 15.5. It's 16.5 now.
Yeah.
So we're not growing with any,
but we use cars rather than horses now, so,
really.
yeah.
Oh.
You didn't
damn.
know that, Bruce?
No, I didn't.
That's why he was late.
But
That's why he was like.
that's what's critical about the northwest portion of the
Right.
city,
Right.
is it's the only place left.
And so if you were to develop there and do it correctly, you'd have buried utilities, you'd maintain the viewscapes that you have up there, increase outdoor recreation.
And we've talked about doing that. And again, it's the best we could hope with a 2% tax cap is a public-private partnership with a very motivated private entity, basically.
Yeah, just for the record, the utilities actually own the infrastructure, but they do pay property tax to us for the plots of land. It can be, in total, it can be a significant amount of money, but that was a 2004 Supreme Court decision that ruled that, and if we're not taxing them, we should be. Anyway, that the city of Rochester.
But again,
can
it's
tax.
an asset of the city, that portion of which generates the income,
It's an asset to the city,
right?
yes.
Okay,
Oh,
yes, Stacy.
I just went to a land use law conference, and one of the things that they mentioned at the very end, they use those exact words, recreational infrastructure. Since COVID, there has been a ton of money set aside for grants for that, and
Mhm.
nobody is applying for
Did you
it.
see what Franklin did?
Yeah.
If,
They have a whitewater park right in the middle of the city.
if you had, if anybody had watched or been at the Opera House the other day, and I raised my hand and asked a question about the value of outdoor recreation for economic development in the city. And Stephen Dupree leapt right in on that and had some very good information about funding that is coming up. And if we aren't on the top of the ball now, getting at it, then we could fail. But they're looking at stuff to fund stuff like the WOW Trail.
they are.
Now, Mr. McClure was vehement that Meredith would do anything to have a full extension of the WOW Trail to go all the way up. And they will do what it takes to assist to bring that infrastructure through. In this point here, while I'm sitting right here right now, this Granite Outdoor Alliance is a very interesting group. And this is a group that promotes outdoor recreation in the same type of stuff that we're talking about right now. And I had reached out to them today. I haven't been able to get my return calls or anything like that. But once again, they speak of exactly what we're talking about here and these grants. So whoever within our structure here is able to apply for these things, I think it's very important that we aren't slacking, that we get right out there and put our hands out. Other communities are going to get it. And I think it's something that's very important for this area here, the cohesiveness, the interconnectivity of the community. You know, one of the things I got out of Tuesday's night, where we're all proud of downtown, we're proud of Lakeport and the stuff that's going on. But I had to raise my hand and say, hello, I live in the Weirs. And where is our WOW Trail? Where is the interconnectivity? And so my wife, who lived down in the DC area, Falls Church, they had a whole area of these trails which would go over the highways and everything like that. And it brought the bonding in it. One of the things that Steve Dupree spoke about was in Concord, going up through Kentucky, all the way north, and all the trails that are there and what it brings to it. What I recognize is when I went to Burlington, Vermont, that their downtown was rooted on people riding bicycles and being around and a part of it. And I really do think it's part of our, not the solution, total economic development type of plan. I think it needs to be looked at.
Burlington, like Laconia, has a trail that runs right through the middle of town.
Correct.
And straight up the lakefront to the next town
Beautiful.
up. So it is very nice.
I think isn't right now the biggest problem with the WOW Trail extending to Meredith southbound?
Well, I don't
cares?
understand.
I know,
I don't
I know.
Tell
understand
them
it.
that this is the way the community is doing it, and this is what it's going to be. So enough of the people that say stop, just,
There are some engineering problems.
Well, there may be some
But they can
engineering
be
problems,
solved.
but. it's
Oh, they
gotta
can be
litigated
solved,
first.
but I think,
Right.
it's possible that this project's been delayed because of fears of litigation.
Yes, and I say litigate it and put it to bed one way or the other.
I say fire the steam train up and roll it down the tracks. Let's go.
It's an active
Part of the
railroad.
problem here is railroad folks.
Oh,
Yes,
We're
that's true. Part of
up
the
to our
problem is the
eyebrows in
railroad.
dealing with a railroad.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
So
wait,
it's not quite as.
Have you ever seen a railroad
wait a minute, wait a
in,
minute,
have you
wait a
ever,
minute, Wait a minute,
I'm
please.
sorry.
You have a railroad right here and the WOW Trail
And we're
goes around
beside
it.
it.
Exactly.
Okay,
But wait a minute, let me finish, please.
why? You waste time.
So, I'll get back to him. So,
We had
so,
breakfast this morning. I'm allowed to beat him up.
so,
Come on,
so
Alden.
the problem up there is the WOW Trail doesn't want to have the expense of the fence. They don't want to push back from the tracks. They're thinking if we get rid of the tracks, we don't have to do the fence. Yeah, that is, and it will go right through there. So their idea, as Rusty has said, is we'll have the railroad stop here in Lakeport and we'll tear the tracks up there. And the state's not going to allow that.
No, they're
So
not.
you can do the WOW Trail there. You're just going to be a big expense. So if
Well,
there's money to
the
come
the
in.
other
and-
thing that you
take
gotta
care of
worry
that.
about, honestly, Charlie, is the bridge.
Well, that's another factor too.
Exactly.
They got to
The
deal
But
with.
it can be dealt with.
Well.
We could
so
build a little
far-
bicycle ferry.
Hey, don't forget, the original plan for the Laconia bypass was Franklin to Meredith.
Oh,
Yes,
I'm
it
with you.
was.
Yeah. And I
If it
still
wasn't
don't
for
know
the
how they
Lord
plan to
Hampshire
get through
Motel, it would've been
Weiri's
there.
speech, but
If it hadn't been for the guy that owned the Lord Hampshire Motel, it would have gone.
Yeah,
really?
Yeah.
Yep,
That was the guy who killed it.
yep.
Really?
Yeah, Governor Sununu, then Governor, former Governor Sununu just finally got sick of it and said, this is it.
what he said was, we're gonna improve 106. That'll be good enough. yeah.
Right, yeah, or something to that effect, but he got sick of doing battle with.
Now
the-
we've got in some places, what, 6 lanes down there? We do.
Yeah, no,
Very
they just
close
widened
to
it
the
again.
track. We might.
They just widened it again.
Yep.
Yep.
they're in the process of-
Oh, they're in the-
So one of the things about this Granite Outdoor Alliance, and these are elder folk who speak to this, right? These are older and more experienced than I am. They.
Older.
No one's more experienced, Mike.
No, they speak of these outdoor corridors as infrastructure. This recreation stuff as being infrastructure, and the more connectivity you have, once you get to Meredith, you're riding all the way to Plymouth. Those
Right.
tracks aren't there.
Yeah, they are.
The bed is.
Well, the tracks are there.
I know.
The tracks are there.
I've
That's
ridden
where
on a
Lincoln-
little thing up there. I get it.
That's the Concord to Lincoln line, yeah.
Misinformation.
And it's still a usable rail
We
line.
Still run freight up through there. It's the week to Lincoln.
No, I think the last freight was Forest Products that went
Oh,
south.
my gosh. Okay.
3M.
You missed it. They've been
Tilton.
bringing ties up on freight, right through Laconia, right all the way up.
I guess I missed it.
I know.
There's a lot of other stuff going on in my neighborhood
I
right
noticed.
now.
You can't see the track.
Can't see the.
You can't see the tracks.
You can't see.
Have you seen my house up there on it? You know,
The
I'm
king of
like-
the hill.
I stand out there at the fence every day and I go, I am king of the hill.
Yeah, we can see you.
It's
from
like ground
there.
zero.
They had to go and buy a varmint rifle to keep me off the property. Okay,
I
have other notes, but I'll wait.
yeah, well, have your fun when you can.
Place where we can get some.
So, anyway, any other questions or comments?
I was gonna ask about the
From the state.
voting for chairman.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Well, I didn't know if this was.
Who wants to be
appropriate.
chair?
I have a recommendation.
You do?
I do. I'd like to nominate Ms. Susie, who I've watched over the last year and a half. Delve into all this stuff,
Second.
attended meetings and.
Look, you don't want it then.
She goes to these planning conferences. I'm the
Like
chair. I don't
nobody
even
else.
go to these
I
things.
think a vice chair is
Just
just
gonna
perfect little niche for me, but Peter is doing.
I'm setting you up for my retirement, so.
Yeah, I like to follow.
One of
that.
these
Second
days,
that
one of these
nomination.
days, I'm gonna be just
Councilor
gone to
Taylor.
Mexico. There's gonna be a little
Okay.
sign, my front door.
So in
San
that.
Montaneo, I think.
And in that, and as we sit at these, in the interest of continuity, maybe for this year, I would like to nominate Mr. Peter Brunette. Now, I know this sets us up for a vote. And if anybody seconds this also, and Peter is willing, then I'd like to nominate Peter for the process in no way to.
I think you're speaking
If I
very
can
wisely.
add. If I can add just,
I would like to decline that. I've got a lot on my plate right now.
That's fine too.
But thank you, Mike, for that vote of confidence.
I think you have everyone's confidence here. You certainly have mine. I just want to see someone who has at least as much desire to see things that happen as you have.
I
And I, you know,
I wholeheartedly agree with you. That's
Oh, I
how she
noticed you
became vice
seconded.
chair of the
Yeah.
planning board. Because like I said, we would go to her and say, would you tell us?
Yeah.
She would give us the report from conservation and then she'd tell us all the trainings we didn't go to.
So you're on a few boards.
So anyway, so we have a motion and a second for chair. Does anybody want to make a nomination for vice chair?
Well, any other nominations for chair?
Any other nominations for chair, right?
There's anyone else in this room. would be-
You have to pick one if you're gonna make a nomination.
This is my first year, no thank
This is
you.
the part where you get to nominate your way out of your position.
You know, Mr. Foote has been on this committee for actually a few more years than me. I would like to
More
nominate
than
Mike
me.
Foote as
Right?
chair.
So we have it down to, did anyone second that?
Oh. See how it goes?
I'll second it. Okay, so Now, we do have an actual election. Do we do secret ballot?
No,
Hell no.
hell no. It's a public meeting.
It's a
No
public
secret
meeting.
meeting. No secret
The
ballots.
secret's here.
All right, anybody, any other nominations? Because there's only two officers usually, this chair and vice chair. Okay, nominations are closed. So all those in favor of Stacy as chair, raise your hand.
Sorry.
All right,
Oh my God. You'll be fine, Stacy.
I would say she won that one rather handily. And now vice chair,
I second her nomination of the vice chair,
okay.
because I think Mike can certainly help her with historic.
Well, he's way smarter than me. I mean, every
No
time
way.
we sit next to each other, I learn something from him, so.
I think we all do.
So, okay, so all those in favor of
Mike.
Mike being the vice chair? Landslide. It's a mandate, buddy.
That's it.
Okay.
I'm headed there.
I didn't vote for you.
Thank
you.
So we've done that. Is there any other business that we need to discuss this evening?
Guys already failed to set
the record.
No, we had a
we-
lot of questions.
We had a lot of questions. We have some new members and you don't want to get cynical about these things, you know. I think it really does. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, guys, but it really, if for no other reason than sometimes it gives some members of the council leverage when they're trying to convince their peers, you know, sometimes it's just political cover, but other times it's like, well, look at what the recommendations were. You know, there was a reason why the CIP made this recommendation as opposed to that recommendation. And sometimes all we do is delay a project. Like, well, yes, it's a 3-year project, but we're not going to start it in this fiscal year. We'll start it in the next one.
Not intending to speak for my fellow councilman, but
Nor could you.
no. But I mean, I want to make it clear, he can make his own comments, but I think my experience in the last 4 years has been most of the council members I've seen put a lot of weight on what this committee recommends
Right.
within the confines of the dollars that are available.
Right.
Now, sometimes a department head will come in with sort of a semi-emergency thing that bumps things out of the way. But barring things like that and barring economic ceilings,
Mhm.
and the other thing that I think we need to think about, particularly when it comes to infrastructure, is infrastructure frequently requires bonding, almost always requires bonding. We have a certain bonding limit
Mhm.
we have to stay under.
We have to pay off some bonds before we
Right,
can
and
issue
we
new ones, right?
can't go above,
Right.
borrowing above a certain amount. The auditors won't let us, number one. Number two, most of the lending organizations start to
Yeah,
back off
you
if
don't get
you.
favorable rates or anything.
Yeah, so all of those have to factor into what the council ultimately does. But I feel confident, certainly from my perspective, and I suspect from March as well, to say the council puts a lot of weight in the work that you folks do. And I'm looking forward to working on this over the next period of time. And
All right.
I'm looking forward to a chairman who really pays attention. So thank you, Tom. I mean that sincerely.
You will figure it out, Stacy.
You know.
Well, you're good to go.
You're good to go. Mike will help you. We'll all help you. It's not that.
All you're gonna do is just set the meeting up.
I'll need to shut you down. You know that, right?
That's why I nominated
You know, I knew you were gonna say that. I felt it coming.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Is there any other business?
I would like to adjourn this.
Okay,
meeting
make a
and
motion to adjourn.
Start.
Second.
typing.
Second,
All,
all in favor?
yeah, that's you next. All in favor, that's it.